on groundwater than any other country in the world, accounting for more than one-fourth of the global demand of groundwater. Roughly 80% of India's residents depend on groundwater for both drinking and irrigation. Even though groundwater is a resource that lies beneath, there are so many ways in which it makes itself visible, and yet we sometimes choose to unsee it through the food we eat, the water we drink, the wells that dry up, and the perennial rivers that turn seasonal and disappear altogether. Around 75% of India's water, both ground and surface, are contaminated. Under this scenario, is water really the auxiliary of life? Are we heading towards absolute scarcity? With that, I will not take much of your time because, as you know, the authors are so great at the kind of conversation that we're having. So let's begin the session already and have our moderator's introduction. So Dr. Atya Kaple, Chief Scientist in Environmental Biotechnology and Genomics Division, NEERI, Nagpur. She's the Asia Vice President of Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, a program of UNESCO. Dr. Kaple uses metagenomic tools to understand microbial diversity and function so as to add new dimensions into environmental pollution research, especially in wastewater reuse and rejuvenating degraded soil. She brings in two specific domains into her specific research, scientific research and career, generating knowledge via research base and taking science to society like she's doing today with our author. So with that, I would like to introduce our author as well. Mridula Ramesh is the founder of Sundaram Climate Institute, which focuses on waste and water solutions and education. She is an active angel investor in clean tech startups with a portfolio of over a dozen startups. A graduate with distinction from Cornell University, she is an MBA from Kellogg School of Management. She teaches climate change at the Great Lakes Institute of Management and is a regular columnist for First Post, also writing for The Hindu and Down to Earth. Without further ado, let's have our moderator and the author on the stage. Please, let's have a huge round of applause for them.
So good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all. It's lunchtime and still we can see some audience. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Mridula. We really look forward to hearing your talk about this, very important book that you have written. I feel that most of the people are not even aware of the water crisis that is looming on our heads.
Give it to me to the nearest 5 liters. How many of you can give me an answer? 45 liters. Oh, excellent. We have one person. Anyone else? How do you know? Okay. No, great. What about you, sir? Okay. So, look, we have an audience of, I'm just eyeballing here, 70 to 80 people. And we have 3 people who have an estimate of how much they've used. This is better than average, and this is a very self-selected population. At 1 o'clock lunchtime slot, you're here to listen to water, right? And in that self-selected population, 3 people have an idea of how much you use. So what I'm trying to say is water is invisible until it runs out. And that's how I got into this. So started teaching, then they said write, I started writing, people seem to like it, started investing, so here I am.
Great. So I've read somewhere that, Mridula, when she was doing grocery shopping and, over time she realized that there's so much of waste that she was generating with excess of grocery shopping. And so she started, regulating her things so that she buys minimum that gets used up, and so she generates minimum waste. She lives in an almost net zero house. She regulates the amount of water that is used. So Mridula, I was wondering when I read all that what about your family? Are they on board with you, or they treat you like a strict principal and just bear with you?
No, a great question, and I think it's fundamental to everything I advise or ask you to do. See, I think in a festival like this, in a theme like this on inclusion, you're going to get a lot of advice on conscience, right? You should do this, you should do that. And I'm a pragmatist. I have a teenage son and an almost teen daughter, and I don't believe the shoulds work. Okay. Conscience is great when it inspires you to make a change. Every day when you're sending your kids off to school or you have a deadline to make, it won't work. It just won't. So I usually don't give instructions at all. Okay, I travel a lot, and my husband, we have a cook who comes to help us. My husband tells me if the cook quits, I'll leave. I can't do stupid experimentation in the house. So what we do is, in my day job, right, we won a Japanese award. And in that Japanese manufacturing award, one of the design principles is something called poka-yoke. Okay, poka-yoke literally translates to idiot proofing. So anything you do, you make it very easy to do. So it almost becomes a habit to do. So let me give you an example. So in the zero waste, we are nearly net zero waste. So if we generate about 17 kilos of waste a day in the house, about 3 kilos of food, peel, all of that waste, and then 13 kilos of leaves, branches, etc. in the garden. Our dustbins are kept just so, right? And they don't have lids. So it takes no extra time for a person to segregate. It's just natural. That's how they've been situated. And why no lids? Because the time it takes them to open the lid and put it in, we found that the compliance came down. So stuff like that, right? The other thing is a lot of all our food waste goes into the biogas plant at home. Very important when you design, and we were talking about sewage treatment plants, etc. Very, very important, and it's an underappreciated fact. It can't stink. Okay, so recently I had the British High Commissioner come home. So I think I know there is 1 Tamilian in the audience, but I don't know if I'll say it in Tamil and then translate. So I said, கொஞ்சம் அதிகாரிகள் வீட்டுக்கு வராங்க, officials are coming home. And they said, why are they coming home? I said, நம்ம குப்பத்தொட்டியை பார்க்க வராங்க, which means they're coming to look at our dustbins. Okay, it's another Tamilian, so you're laughing. Okay, and every person who comes home, I say, come to the biogas plant and smell it. Right? If it stinks, you've lost the plot. You're never going to get consistent implementation. So 2 design principles. No, I don't give orders. Nobody will listen to me. Nobody will listen. Okay, consistently, nobody will listen. Make it easy and think about aesthetics. It can't smell, it can't look bad, can't be an eyesore, then it won't work.
I haven't come across any composting plant that doesn't stink, and so I should come to your house. Yes. Also, yeah. I hope the relevant people are listening. Okay. So moving on to her book on watershed. You know, like we were just saying in the beginning, that how every river stream is polluted. But more important than the river is the watershed that feeds it. You know, all these little tributaries, underground channels that actually feed the river and let it happen. And if you are tampering or destroying that watershed, then just imagine what kind of a water crisis you are creating for our future generations. So that is something that everyone needs to really think about. So Mridula, when we talk of destroying these watersheds, and I was thinking more of these channels that actually lead into all these rivers. Some are very tiny, some are really, like I said, underground. So our population is increasing by leaps and bounds, right? So we have so much of urban development. So do you think that these, construction and without doing a proper ecological survey, all this is destroying our watershed?
I'll say very quick answer, yes. But the more interesting answer is why.
Okay, why?
Right? Again, Nagpur, like Madurai, you get very few rain days in a year. You get
62 we have average.
Yeah. We get less than 40. So for us, we're even more seasonal. And it's very interesting to see, this has always been a cotton growing belt traditionally. Madurai grows sugarcane and rice in that 840 millimeters. So storage has always been important. And if you look at the traditional tanks, which are these lakes which are created by check dams, etc., they reveal a wonderfully sophisticated understanding of the water that ancient Indians had. Right? Always had the tank irrigation, because when you have only 50 to 60 rain days and you have to use water every day, you need to store it somewhere. And that is precisely what the tanks did. Now, I live, and I'll tell you what happened to the tanks. And it's a repeating pattern across cities in India. Delhi, for instance, has 1,000 water bodies, right? And my friends and I went hunting for the oldest Bauli in Delhi, and we found it inside a landfill, right? And I think that gives a wonderful, we don't appreciate our water anymore, right? In this self-selected audience, 3 people understand how much water they use. Water has become invisible. The moment water has become invisible, how will the watershed be secure, right? And my institute, we really looked at why tanks were important a long time ago, right? And why are you all here? You're here to hear a good story. And why do you think it was different in the past? The Puranas, the stories, everything had to do with water. And I'm going to tell you a story from Madurai. It's called Thiruvilayadal, where Shiva comes and plays. Thiruvilayadal means divine plays. And it talks of a time when the Vaigai was in floods, right? And the king said, I need every house to give me a able-bodied man to build a bund. There was an old woman called Vandiyame, and she sold something called puttu, which is like a rice cake. She was old, she lived alone, she didn't have someone who could do this. So she said, I'll give my leftover puttu to anyone who will give me labor. Nobody came forward. So finally Shiva came. He took the guise of a man and he said, I'll help you. But Shiva ate the puttu and slept off. And the king's guards found him and hit him with a cane. Right? And the story goes that every citizen of Madurai felt the blow. And every year this festival is celebrated to commemorate that. Now there are 2 takeaways from this story. One, even the gods are not exempt from water management. It's everybody's responsibility. Second, there is punishment. Water management is everybody and nobody is exempt. And it goes towards good storytelling coming back again and again and again. So you have your festivals. The festivals that Maharashtra will celebrate is very different from what Madurai will celebrate. We celebrate Pongal. Pongal is the biggest festival for us because that's when our harvest is. I bet you your biggest festival will be after your harvest. In Punjab, the traditional harvest festival is, and that's in March, because in March is when your harvest comes. Same thing. So our watershed was respected because there was good storytelling, and newsflash, water had a price in ancient India. Everybody paid a price, but it was a price paid in kind. So with good storytelling, status that came from festivals and the price, you had a respect for the watershed. One last thing. This is a festival on inclusion, right? It could be water management was very, very casteist. Okay, so there was caste elements involved in tank management, etc. So what did the people who were excluded get? They got cash flow. Fishing, right? Tanks had fishing. Tanks had lotuses that grow on it. Tanks had livestock that could feed off the water. So tanks provided, so many continuous benefits, either religious, spiritual, you name it, cash, it was there. Today, I don't know about the tanks in Nagpur, I haven't had the good fortune to visit it. But take an average city tank, it's an eyesore. It will typically have a landfill that is located, that Delhi landfill is, the Delhi Bauli is located in a landfill, but many will have waste, it will smell, there will be pigs roaming around. What status can that give you? If there is fishing there, do you want to eat that fish? No. So like the link between community and tank is severed. The moment that happens, why do we even and tanks become very, very good land to build on. So T Nagar in Madras, if you go there, it's a huge shopping district. It's now a tank. Across cities, we failed to understand why we need storage, that our water is special, it is seasonal, and tanks across cities have become buildings, they've become schools, they've become corporation offices, they've become courts, they've become bus stands. One of the things we did is we hunted for water bodies in Madurai, and that should be an activity here also. Look for your old water bodies.
In continuing to your thought, we actually, my group did a survey of all the wells in Nagpur. So the municipal corporation has a list of 666 wells, So in all the zones, so my students had gone to each and every well and did a physical verification and checked their status. And very sadly we found that more than 50% are like abandoned, they are dumped with solid waste. Only I think there were about 13% of this 666 that were in use. So, it is really a sad story, and that is something that can really be used to recharge groundwater.
Exactly. So in our study we found a functional tank or a Bauli, kept up groundwater by about 200. And that's what he did. He said, look, I don't know. Please teach me. And he respected the local knowledge. And he took people along every step of the way. And so everybody, there was another small thing. We're great in dealing with crises. I don't think you're at the precipice of a crisis yet. And I'll tell you why. No, I know the suicides. I know the suicides. There, everybody was suffering. And they couldn't really tap into groundwater because there's a lot of fluoride contamination. So it was either, do the Baulis or emigrate. So people were emigrating. Very important thing. The boys in the village weren't getting girls to marry them. Because nobody wanted to give their girls to boys in that dry thing. So all of these helped, and he took people along every step of the way. So your question, why can't
it be replicated?
See, again, I know the policy question is coming up later. On this water thing, there is one thing I've heard on waste, on environment, on climate, everything I've heard one thing. The government should do it. Okay, it's like this lazy shorthand. The government should do it. Rajendra Singh didn't say the government should do it. The villagers didn't say the government should do it. Look, I ran out of water at home. In the 3 years after we started our work and we got back water in our borewell, Madurai went through its worst drought in 140 years. We were the only house not to buy water. And every story I've profiled in the book is about someone who said, let's leave the government aside, there's power in my hands. And you're sort of disempowering yourself. There's so much power in your hands. I think Rajendra ji has recognized that. Every success story says, be my best friend. Start here and then work with the people around me.
Yeah. So just points out that we have only 10 minutes left.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize time is moving too fast, just before we very quickly ask a question, one thing. See, what would you suggest are, the different levels of managing watersheds? Like individual contribution, then, the community, the urban local bodies, and the government. What I mean is state and national, the policies there. So, your take on how everybody in the ladder can contribute.
Okay. So I think this is my bias. I think India's water is so variable. If I come from Madurai and start opining about Nagpur, it doesn't work. If I come from Madurai and start opining about Chennai, it doesn't work. Right? If I start in Chokikulam and want to do 3 neighborhoods down, it doesn't work. So I think because our variability is so high, geographic variability, I think Individual watersheds matter. We didn't get into politics of water. Water is not politically salient. Everybody says, oh, it's so important to control it. My institute went and asked 900 odd people in Madurai during one of the worst droughts, will you vote on water? Most people said no. So water is not, and please, I would love to discuss this with anyone. In my experience, water is not a electorally powerful topic. So you can't expect sensible policy to come out. Given these two, high variability, not sensible policy, individual watersheds, you look at your home, you look at your neighborhood, there's a lot that can be done there.
Actually, I have so many more questions, but unfortunately, time ran out. You should have given us 2 hours, this is a very important topic. But we will now open it up to the audience. So if anybody has questions, we have one.
You were one of the 3 people who was very sure about your water.
Yeah. I would like to share my personal experience. In this part of Vidarbha, we have nearly 15,000 traditional tanks, and now we have only 7,000. Since 2006, we started pursuing the matter with government, but as you said that there are policy issues. So later on in 2008, we took a policy decision to rejuvenate those tanks. And I was one of the member secretary of that committee, so we drafted the policy. Problem is that in urban area, in all over India, we don't have any policy to rejuvenate the tanks in urban areas. We have policy to rejuvenate the tanks in rural area, not in urban.
I disagree with you.
Not in Maharashtra.
Maharashtra maybe, Tamil Nadu, because we've got hit on our head so many times by floods and droughts. We do have a policy. I know in Madurai, the studies in the book also, 19 tanks were rejuvenated. Water levels in the surrounding 1 kilometer has risen by 200 feet after rejuvenation.
Yes.
And, something, again, cash matters. People living around a rejuvenated tank spend 100 rupees less per month in buying water. So we do have a policy in Tamil Nadu.
But I talked to Government of India also, many people, but pan-India we don't have any policy. This is one of the reasons why our tanks are being used as dumping yard. Secondly, as she has asked, why the model proposed by Rajendra Singh ji has not been implemented in other places. We have implemented the rejuvenation of our own tanks, but the rainfall pattern and agroclimatic zone varies from state to state and valley to valley. So it is very difficult to adapt. Because in Rajasthan we are doing rainfall pattern is around 460, 100 mm.
So
because in this part is high.
Sorry to interrupt, but please keep your questions
it's over.
And, short.
Okay. Ma'am also addressed.
Thank you for your question, sir.
What is your opinion on RO water?
Okay. So we were talking about this again. So, please someone ask about sewage. My husband tells me I'm terrible, cocktail conversationalist because I always bring sewage into the discussion. But it's important in water. So, RO. I have an RO at home. Okay, because my groundwater, the TDS is well above 1,000. So I can't use it. It's not potable. But what we do is we test the RO, we test the reject, and we test the raw water. And I tell my technician to go climb a tree, and I adjust the rejection fraction so that not too much is rejected, and the rejection water quality is pretty good. So I use only RO reject to water my garden. My cousin told me all my plants will die. I said, let them die because I can't afford to transport water. So that's what we do. But RO as a technology, the problem is you use it where you don't need to. If your input water quality, say the TDS is less than 500, you should be using alternative technologies to, total dissolved solids. Okay. The other big problem of RO which no one talks about is the reject. We were talking about it just now. The moment you use RO, you get good water coming outside the RO, but you get an equal or much larger fraction of reject water. Initially when we started, I was shocked to find out we were getting, if I got like 10 liters of good RO water, I was getting 90 liters of reject water. I said, are you mad? I can't afford to buy so much water. A 90% reject. So we brought it to 1 to 1. And you know, like the kind of things that RO mechanics will tell you, which they are also not very, children, you have children in the house, you're giving them poison. We just test it, okay? And I think that's the biggest thing. So RO is a tool. Like any tool in technology, there are positives and negatives. It is used where it shouldn't be used, and very often used inappropriately.
Good afternoon. I just have one simple question that, so we discussed a lot about heartland, mainland India. So I basically belong from the Himalayas, right? So I wanted to understand what kind of watershed management systems could be done in Himalayan regions, that because there the groundwater is...
Where are you from?
I'm from Darjeeling.
Okay. So I have, see, all my life I've never seen the Himalayas. And this May, I went to Sikkim, I went to Darjeeling. Part of my heart is still caught there. It's so heart-stoppingly beautiful. So I have written about Arunachal here. And see, the thing that struck me about the Northeast and the Himalayas is you get 3 to 5 meters of rainfall in a few months. Right? Very, very different of, 1,000 milliliters, spread over 65 rain days. And the biggest thing for that is you have steep slopes. The one thing you need are the trees to hold on to the soil, right? You just need those trees, and it's a fragile region. It's tectonically charged. You need the trees to hold on to the soil. Step lightly. That's the thing I would say in those regions. You have to step lightly. This is something that an army general told me. Okay, there are 5 ways to build a road. You can still build a road. There are 5 ways to do it. I think, look, if you tell a lot of people in the Northeast who need dependent on tourist income that you can't have tourist income, it's not going to work. I think you have to be thoughtful, and I think there needs to be patience and talking and a little bit of non-finger pointing, talking to understand. Just say, look, this is fragile. We need the trees. We need to step lightly, but we also need to provide tourist potential, etc. And I think there is a way out, but it involves conversation and understanding.
Thank you. We'll have the last question. Does anybody want to ask a question? Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Lukman Faruqi from Hyderabad. My dad did a PhD in sustainability, and he has saved about, and just for his small, multi-state company, he has saved about 1 crore rupees in his small efforts of management here and there over the past 6-7 years. So I have found that at the corporate level, if one person can have such a huge change on water management, electricity management, so what tips can you give us all corporate people over here? What small steps they can do to save water or electricity at their workplace?
Great question. Again, the thing about water is most people don't have a clue on how much they use. So in my factory, I help run 2 factories. We're not a big user of water. We have 100 meters. Okay. People thought I was mad to put 100 meters, but what that allows us to do is we save millions of liters of water within one year on a spend of less than 1 lakh. Not counting the meter cost. And that's, there's so much leakage, and we have no clue on where it's leaking, how it's leaking, why it's leaking, because we don't know. That without the meters, it's impossible to say. So now, only thing corporates have only 2 things. Put your meters, so you know how, and because you don't pay a price, there is no meaningful water price in India today. So it's not something that's on your balance sheet. And unless it's on your balance sheet, you're not going to do it. Okay, conscience will only get you so far. Second, please treat and reuse your sewage. Because how many business leaders are here? 1, okay, 2. One thing about India and water and politics, if any industry comes up against a farmer, the industry will lose. if any industry comes against drinking water, the industry will lose. Okay, so I think industry should be aware of that. Not as a group. Not as a group. Whenever it is a good, politically case studies here, Tuticorin, everybody shut down. Okay. If you look at Tirupur, again shut down. A lot of the orders have gone to Bangladesh, to other parts of the world. Short term, farmers may lose. Once you get organized, industry will always lose.
The use of wastewater is an extremely important topic. But time is out.
The
Sadly.
best part about VLF is that you can always have a discussion later, and ma'am will be available at her consent, of course. With that, let's disperse into the next session. But before that, I just want to say that this was a very brilliant conversation, and I think it deserves more than 2 hours, if I may say so myself. Art can be of any form, whether you see it, hear it, say it, it only matters that you express art the way you want. I would like to request Arnav Gaikwad from Alag Angle community to come to the stage and present you with a one-of-a-kind painting that he made himself just for you. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Arnav.